Welcome to Armchair Expert, Experts on Expert. I'm Dax Shepard, and I'm joined by Monica Mouse.
Hello.
Hello. Today we have Van Jones, who is incredible. You know Van Jones from CNN, or at least that's where I came to know Van Jones. Always such an interesting perspective. He is also a 3-time New York Times bestselling author, the founder of multiple social enterprises, and a world-class changemaker. His books include Beyond the Messy Truth, Rebuild the Dream, The Green Collar Economy, as well as The Van Jones Show and The Redemption Project. He has a new documentary called The First Step, which premiered at the 2021 Tribeca Film Festival, and it's right up my alley because Van Jones' main mission is to bridge the gap between the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans, to actually work on some of the major issues that face all of us, left or right. And so I applaud him for that. And the documentary is called The First Step. Also, he has a new podcast called Uncommon Ground with Van Jones, which has the same agenda.
Yeah. He's a very cool person. I've been wanting to have him on for so long. He is incredibly insightful.
He is. And we think you'll think so too. So please enjoy Van Jones.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
How long have you been in LA?
10 years.
I'm having some cognitive dissonance. I associate you so much with like DC, New York.
Yeah.
You're from Tennessee.
Yep.
Went to school out east.
Yep.
And you've been in the backyard for 10 years.
Yeah, well, all my shows were on the East Coast, and so I've always either had an apartment in D.C. or New York. But my kids live here, my ex-wife lives here. And so at least you realize that we're in New York and D.C. Some people still think CNN is all in Atlanta.
Oh, sure.
So you meet people like, oh, you live in Atlanta? Like, no, I've been to Atlanta twice in my life. Like, what are you talking about?
I'm from there, and I do like to claim CNN as
the lawyers are there and the building's there, but all the talent is in New York and D.C.
That's generally how it goes.
Although
Sanjay lives there,
No, good.
I think, right?
Yeah,
Doesn't
yeah,
he?
He does. I can see by your response, you're like, yeah, I'm not keeping tabs on all the other anchors. Did I get the subtext of that?
He may have a house in Atlanta, but he's basically living in New York.
He's everywhere.
Well, it is what it is. I mean, the crazy thing about the world we're in now is we wasted in cable TV so much time in the past 15 years in these kind of like graphics wars. You know, we want like the best studio with the graphics and the lights and the zooms and the that. And then once COVID hit, we didn't have any of that stuff. We were just all at our houses on Skype, and the audience liked it just fine.
That was what was revealed?
Yeah, I mean, they like it. You know, you see somebody's cat walk by, somebody's kid walks by, you see the books on the bookshelf. So the audience actually liked it better when we're just at home talking crap on
your couch.
on FaceTime, and then all this money that was spent on these massive studios and all this sort of stuff. So anyway.
But do you think that has a shelf life? Because I can give you an example. Like, I used to be religious about watching John Oliver's show.
Sure.
I don't know what happened when the audience went away, but for me, I was like, I need that. He needs it. Everyone needs it. Like, in comedy, he's talking to a camera, and I'm like, you get your fucking audience. I've stopped watching because I don't want to watch one dude on his own do comedy.
Yeah. It could come back around. I just don't know what's going to happen. First of all, people are now saying that cable TV itself is going to go away. It's all going to be online and streaming and stuff like that. So I don't know. But also being a cable news personality is also kind of like being a D-list celebrity. It's kind of like people know you kind of, but it's like, hey, I know you.
You said something smart, right?
You're Vance Johnston. I watch your show every night, man. Every night. I don't miss it. In fact, I DVR your show, Vance Johnston. I'm like, it's Vance Jones, and I don't have a show.
But thank you so much. I don't know. That's interesting you would say that. I guess maybe that might speak to all of our individual insecurities we all carry, because I actually hold you guys, like that same trip I met you. So you and I met in real life like a month ago.
Right.
And just prior to that, we had been in Idaho, and Jake Tapper happened to be at a place I was at. And lovely fucking guy. I don't know if,
Yeah,
wonderful guy. Yeah, I guess I assigned to him some kind of other layer of like status because he's talking with world leaders.
True.
And you got to be smart. You got to be on your game.
He's one of the best. He's one of the best to ever do it.
And I feel that way about you. So I think when us actors are around y'all, we're kind of like, oh, they think we're dumb.
Well, comparatively, we are.
Well, remember Matt Damon, how well-spoken he was?
Yeah, we'll exclude Matt Damon.
Okay,
from the list,
yeah, he's a
'cause
Harvard
perfect.
grad. There's a
Yeah.
few smart ones out there.
Yeah, I think people give us a lot of credit, but it's a weird job.
Tell me.
Because most of the time, nobody cares.
Okay.
Most nights, you're sitting there, you maybe have, if you're, CNN, maybe you have 1 million, 1.2 million, 1.5 viewers in a country of 300 million.
Sure.
Which means the vast majority of people are aggressively not watching. It's like, we don't care about you at all.
Uh-huh.
And then suddenly something will happen.
Yeah.
And you might have 80 million people worldwide. The difference between CNN and, say, MSNBC or Fox News, and not talking crap, but just the reality is there's no Fox News in Thailand.
Okay.
Right.
There's no MSNBC in Nigeria.
Okay.
Like CNN is like a global platform.
Uh-huh.
And when real stuff goes down, like an election or something like that, the planet turns to CNN and suddenly you're there with your friends you've been joking around with, screwing around with for 8 months. And it's like, oh, this is
Oh,
real.
fuck, everyone's looking now. Yeah. That is a bizarre
Oh, that's
aspect
so
I never
interesting.
considered.
Crazy, yeah.
It's not like when I was on Parenthood, some weeks we had 3 million viewers and some weeks we had 120.
Right.
That is really
That's
weird.
crazy.
I guess I would certainly fall into that category of viewer where I don't watch news mostly. It doesn't make me happier.
Yep.
Oh my God, by the way, we must get similar annoying comments, which is people will be like, oh, hey man, yeah, my wife says I don't watch TV.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't watch TV. Like, okay, fantastic.
Fine,
Congratulations.
man.
You don't do something. Great. Let me tell you all the things I do. I don't ride elephants to work. Should we celebrate? So similarly, I would imagine people say this to you. But at any rate, yeah, I watch when exactly like you're saying. We're counting up the electoral votes.
A reason
They
to
stormed the
watch.
Capitol. I'm
Sure.
now popping over to CNN. And then I do what I have to imagine you do as well is I just, as soon as I'm doing 30 minutes of CNN, I start getting really curious. Like, what are they? Because they have the same data over on Fox News, but what's it look like going through their filter? So I pop over there.
Right.
And then I just find, and it's generally in a hotel room too. I seem to watch a lot of news in a hotel. And I'm bouncing back and forth trying to, and I got to tell you, the one that was the starkest for me was the Capitol riot.
Right.
I had a rough time with it. I started at CNN because I trust CNN.
Sure.
Well, that's not even, I'm liberal. So of course I start there. And then I'm hearing like Don Lemon, who I totally like. I've loved listening to him talk. He's just talking about guard after guard that was ushering them in, all these cops that were letting them in and blah, blah, blah. So the picture that I was receiving was like, oh, this is a coup. Like all the cops were in on it. That's what I thought happened. And then I start watching these long protracted videos of what happened. And yeah, a couple of idiots did that. But the vast majority of those cops were like in the harm's way. And that is not what was going on. I was like, oh, that's the first time I felt a little bit like that is a sliver of what happened. But boy, that was, I don't know. I was expecting to go to coverage and just see something completely different.
Well, did you go to Fox? What were they saying?
Oh, man. Yeah, I did go. Of course, I went to Fox. And it was, what was the spin? Do you recall?
I don't recall because I was on air during the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which, and that was one of those moments where you really can't believe what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Because
1,000%.
we're sitting there minding our own business and talking about the upcoming inauguration or whatever, and then all of a sudden there are people who are smashing in the things and blah blah. And I'm thinking to myself, if this was Black Lives Matter,
Oh,
I know.
yeah, they would have flown an F-16 over, blew up the Capitol.
Exactly. Like we had to sacrifice all of Congress, but we got those goddamn black activists.
They call up the dude who killed Osama bin Laden from
it's like-
Navy SEALs.
Exactly, some snipers and stuff. So that was, I think, for me, one of those moments where just the dual system, like there's just no way in hell if 10,000 Muslims had charged the Capitol, or 10,000 black activists had charged the Capitol, or 10,000 Mexican dreamers.
Yeah.
Like there would be zero tolerance, left to right, total condemnation.
Yeah.
It was supposed to like, well,
Picture some Saudis.
Yeah.
Oh,
just-
it would be like fucking World War III.
Yeah, and so in those situations, you just have to realize we got a long way to go, man.
So what's interesting is like, oh man, I'm slowly, as you would expect, like the fog is dense. So it's like, for me, first step is like, I start single mom, janitor, dad's out, God knows where, blah, blah, blah. All my challenges. You're privileged, white privilege. I'm like, I don't feel very privileged. So I started there, right? Like, really? I'm privileged? And then, of course, I start like acknowledging, like, oh yeah, I was a functioning drug addict for 12 years and I never spent a night in jail. If I were black, I'd certainly have been in jail, probably be in prison. Start going through the way I've talked to cops. I've told cops to fuck off when they're being assholes.
And you're still here.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
I'm like, go ahead, fuck you, beat my ass. Let's fucking go. Like, let's go.
Really?
Yes, never touching one of them, but like I had a guy impound my car for no fucking reason because I was a punk rocker and he hated me and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're a fucking pig. And
Wow.
in a total haze of not knowing my privilege, right? So, slowly kind of dissecting some of these things. And I certainly have a long way to go, clearly. It's hard to recognize these things. So we all feel like the hero of our story that didn't have any leg up, whatever. So I watched that Capitol riot, insurrection, whatever you want to call it, with a set of eyes that's probably also skewed, which was like, these are fucking losers. Like, I just saw losers. Like, these are the fuckers at my state fair in Michigan who were throwing guys through the popcorn booth window, who are just pieces of shit that are loitering around and they're dummies. And they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like, but again, I can see them that way because they've never hung my uncle. They weren't the cop that pulled me, so it's like, I gotta constantly like try to zoom out. But I saw a bunch of dipshits that couldn't possibly execute anything. So in some weird way, I felt like it wasn't as scary because they just look like bozos.
Right.
What do you think of that viewpoint?
I understand it. I think, obviously, for those of us who literally can't say or do anything for fear of our lives,
Yeah.
that level of brazen entitlement is just incomprehensible.
Yeah.
We're taught from the age of 5 or 6, it's yes, sir, no, ma'am.
Don't look them in
Don't
the
look,
eyes.
exactly the whole
Yeah.
deal. I mean, to this day.
Yeah.
And so I grew up in the rural South on the edge of a small town, Jackson, Tennessee. I was born in 1968. So that was the year they killed Bobby Kennedy. That was the year they killed Dr. King. They were basically trying to kill hope in America. And so I was born in literally, like my dad was in Memphis. He's from Memphis. He was in Memphis the day Dr. King was killed. My twin sister and I were in utero, an hour east in Jackson, Tennessee. So I kind of grew up in this environment of trying to implement what he stood for. Trying to integrate the school system. Both my parents were educators. My dad had grown up poor in Memphis and went to join the military to get out of poverty, put himself through college.
Ended up a principal?
Yeah, ended up as the principal of a middle school. But along the way, there was a lot of discrimination. The idea that my dad could be a principal was kind of like a principal with white students?
Right.
Like, how's that supposed to work out?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, the NAACP had to sue my home county to deal with the fact that they weren't letting, you could be a black assistant principal. They didn't have a lot of black principals. My only point is, growing up in the heartland of the country, I had the experience of seeing poor white kids. I was considered a privileged kid because both my parents were school teachers. We lived in a brick house. The house had a front yard and a backyard.
When a tornado came, you were...
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were fine. Where they were like, but 2 houses down, there were trailers.
Yeah.
And those things, they could be blown away in a moment's notice. So I got a chance to kind of see this whole thing develop of watching the white guys who I was in school with, some of who didn't have much going for them. And the whole thing that they had for themselves going on, they had a truck, right?
Yeah.
They could hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were white.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah, that was enough.
And that was it. But that was enough.
Yeah.
And I mean, literally,
Yeah.
my first job was working at the local newspaper in the mailroom, inking the presses and that kind of stuff.
You were like 17 or something when you were doing internship?
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was like 16, 17. I was still in high school. And the white guys there, that was their love. That they were working. They had a job. They were working at the newspaper. Now, they weren't up front typing. They were in the back working the presses. And, I was there because that was my first opportunity to have any kind of a job. And I wanted to be close to the newspaper. I wanted to become a reporter. But my first job was back there with those guys. And you had to be careful in ways that you wouldn't expect. For instance, if you reach, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're stuffing inserts into the newspaper. You reach for a bottle of Coke. When you grab that bottle, you have to make sure, is it cold or warm? If it's cold, it's Coca-Cola. If it's warm, it's spitting tobacco.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, so you don't want to grab the wrong bottle. I'm telling you, it's not a good experience. It's not a good experience. So those guys, but they were proud of their work. They were proud, and while I was there, a new press was being built across the street. It's going to be more advanced, more exciting. These guys were so excited about the new printing press coming.
Oh, I'm
new
scared.
printing press coming. Now, that summer, I graduated from high school. I get a chance to go to college. They're calling me college boy, college boy. I got a minority scholarship to the University of Tennessee at Martin. The next summer, I come back. I don't go in the back door with the presses and take my shower after work. I take my shower before work, and I go in the front door. In 2 semesters of college, I'm now a completely different class of person in the same building.
Yeah.
And so I would see these guys in the common area with the Coke machines and whatever else. Hey, college boy, whatever. They kind of respected it, but they also didn't feel that great about it.
Yeah. Well, I was only going to say, on some level, whether they're conscious of it or not, clearly they could have done that too.
It's conceivable.
Yeah. In fact, they have to recognize it's less likely for you to do it than them, and they didn't do it. So it's kind of a weird reminder of like, ooh.
It was really a strange kind of experience. You can't shake their hands because they're covered in ink and you're not. It's a weird thing.
Yeah.
Then the next summer, the new press opens.
It's automated.
And the new press is a big building-sized robot.
Yeah.
And they fired all those guys. So in 4 years, we go from me being the guy getting picked on and, hey, college boy, blah, blah, blah. They're the big guys with the big tattoos and the truck and the gun rack and all that.
Yeah.
And then 4 years later, they're out of a job and I'm on my way to Yale Law School.
Yeah.
And I understand the resentment. Now, they aren't looking at the 57 other black guys who didn't make it.
Of course.
Right.
But they're looking at me. Now, I'm not saying that they all had the resentment, but I'm saying I could understand.
Well, that this is something that we really would help ourselves to be clear about, because I think you and I are similar in this way. I don't offer excuses, but I offer explanations. There's a huge difference between an excuse and an
100%.
explanation.
Oh,
so it's like, they're not entitled to have resented you.
No.
But you can comprehend it.
Here's the thing. I have fought against racism my whole life. My father, when he died, the picture they put on his funeral program was him standing in front of Yale Law School the day I graduated with his fist in the air.
Oh, man.
And he told me, he said, you're a 9th generation American. 9th generation. You're the first one in our family that was born with all your rights, and look at what you've done.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you could have rolled the credits on my life that day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just to be 24 years old and have my parents there, you know, with all these fancy families and rich kids, but I got the same degree that they've got. And I moved directly to the Bay Area. I started suing police. I was 24 years old with dreadlocks. It was the year after Rodney King. So I'm suing cops. I'm organizing protests.
I think we both had dreadlocks at the same time.
I
would not have now, but I
that would
did.
be very weird.
That was before we knew. You could be punk rock and have dreadlocks. It was all right then.
Yeah.
When you graduated from Yale, there would have been a part of me, the part of me that has a good amount of fear of failure, where I almost would have been like, I do want my life to end right now, because now I got to do
Now
something
what?
with all this.
I didn't feel that way because I was as angry young man.
Yeah.
Because I had seen Rodney King.
Well, I was going to say, you had a really profound experience, right?
Yeah.
Which was when you were in Yale Law, you were sent as an observer, a legal observer, to the protests in the wake of the verdict of Rodney King.
Yeah.
And you were in turn arrested. I would love to hear like what you witnessed during all that.
I think a lot of people, they see me as just like this guy on CNN who like says stuff they either like or they don't like. And they don't understand. I'm in my early 50s now. I was in my 40s before I was ever on television.
Right.
Yeah.
My 20s and my 30s, I was frontline grassroots activist organizing against police brutality, against over-incarceration when it wasn't popular. Democrats were building prisons in California. When Gray Davis and even Jerry Brown and other guys who were Democrats in California were pro-mass incarceration, you had to be very far on the left to stand up.
Yeah.
And so for me, that a lot of that got really accelerated by being a legal observer of peaceful protest. Now, there were some seriously non-peaceful protests.
So, well, we've all seen that
exactly.
footage,
Yeah, LA, like, they didn't even burn to the ground. But I wasn't in LA, I was in San Francisco. And in San Francisco, the May 8th demonstrations, April 29th was when the verdict came down. By the time you get to May 8th, these are relatively peaceful protests. We all got arrested anyway. And I find myself as a 22-year-old law student, and I'm saying, hold on a second. First of all, I'm not out here breaking the law at all, and I'm in jail. So let me just get my head wrapped around that. And I'm actually a law student who clearly identified to be a legal observer.
Yeah.
And they put my ass in jail with everybody else. Number two, they're building jails and prisons across the country, passing all these 3 strikes, you're out. All this stuff starts happening in the 90s. I saw kids who had drug problems at Yale. They'd go to prison. Nobody called the cops. And in fact, on all these campuses, if you have a bunch of guys who are belligerent, drunk, using drugs, disrespecting women, breaking all the rules, if they're white, they're called a fraternity. If they're black, they're called a gang.
Yeah.
But it's the same damn behavior.
Yeah.
So from where I come from on the whole thing, I felt like this is not liberty and justice for all. I felt like my dad being super patriotic. I mean, he was critical like all African Americans. You know, black people are pretty smart about politics. But my dad fundamentally believed that we had a real shot and needed to show our best foot forward and all that kind of stuff. And I said, look, man, this is an unfair system, and I want to do something about it. I kind of fired myself out of Yale like a cannonball and spent 15 years frontline activism. And so that's my basis.
You created a system that actually could monitor and track problemed officers who were accruing different complaints and whatnot, which prior to that, no one was doing that, right? There was no kind of outside.
The only people who were doing it down in Los Angeles, there was something called Los Angeles Police Watch, where they had a hotline, and they were trying to coordinate litigation, but there was nothing else in the rest of California. So I graduated from law school, moved to California, and I got the State Bar Association to license me to coordinate all the litigation against police departments in the Bay Area. And the crazy thing about it was, at that time, I had a guy named Mike McClune who built a relational computer database. So every time somebody called, we put it in the computer. And within about 6 weeks, certainly within 3 months, we knew every problem officer, every problem precinct, and every problem practice in the Bay Area. So we were able
That
to
quickly.
That quickly because
It was that rampant.
It was that rampant. So we were able to move very, very aggressively with our lawyers that we had, and also going to the city council, going to police commission meetings. And I became a very well-known public loudmouth critic.
Can I ask what it's like driving around the Bay Area knowing you're a one-man internal affairs?
Yeah.
Like you're on them. What happens when you get pulled over?
Luckily, I didn't have a car. I was on the bus and BART all the time. So luckily, they weren't pulling the buses over too much. But I mean, I can't.
But you had to be a little bit afraid.
Only a tiny, massive amount. And but when you're young, you're just crazy.
And when you model out what's going to happen, there's a version where like you're celebrated as a civil rights hero, and then there's one where you get shot, and you just kind of ignore the getting shot one.
Yeah,
like, I think I'll be.
Ignore that one. But we learned some stuff. We learned that if you had the facts, if you had more data than the other side, and you could control when to let it out, when not to, if you, rather than calling a press conference with just yourself, call a rally in front of the police commission right before they meet. So you come in with dozens and hundreds of people, and then you let the children speak first. Let the young people read their journals and let the sisters do their spoken word poetry. Let the young guys rap. Take over the whole event by letting the truth of the young people's experience lead.
Yeah.
Then you bring in the lawyers and the other people. But by then you've pounded the police commission into butter, and all the TV cameras, like they can't believe what they're getting because these kids are so unbelievable. So I learned how you could use law and data and mobilization and culture.
And emotion. Obviously, the kids get you emotionally locked in.
Yeah, I mean, some young girls like, up from the pavement, out of our enslavement. But why the cops got to act like cavemen? And then you bring the grandma up, just close it out with a prayer. And,
oh, geez.
I mean, and so we learned how to put on these kind of indoor rallies for justice using what we had, which was
pain
and witness and facts. And we started to win.
Yeah.
We lost more than we won, but we won some stuff. We got a cop fired. We got the San Francisco Police Department to reform itself. And suddenly I'm in my late 20s, and Reebok has given me an International Human Rights Award. I'm going to the World Economic Forum, all this crazy stuff. And my life starts to change in that as I head into my 30s, we tried to do the same thing in New York. We got beat in New York. It's hard in New York. But as I got into my 30s, I burned out. Because it's brutally hard.
You're basically an oncologist.
Yeah.
You're just seeing,
Yeah, bad stuff every day.
Yeah.
and inside the forest, I'd imagine it's hard to get that view of the long arc of history that seems to be optimistic and getting better. You're not seeing any of that.
Yeah, you got your face against the furnace every day.
Yeah.
You got to raise money. First, it's just you. Then you hire one person, you hire two. Suddenly you got 7 people, 8 people. None of these people can eat if you don't hustle. You got to go to New York. You got to go raise money. In those days, there's no YouTube. In those days, there's no internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got to,
GoFundMe's.
there's no GoFundMe's. So you got to fly to New York.
Get a paper check.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And then you have an audio cassette in your backpack, and you're sitting in the lobby of the Ford Foundation or whatever it is for an hour, hoping that the program officer that said they're going to meet with you is going to meet with you. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, because you're nobody. And then you got to go in there and say, hey, do you guys have a VCR? And it's, yeah, it's like, I just want to hit play on this tape and then let it speak for itself. Here's clip after clip of you going to the police commission meeting, channel 2, channel 4. And they're like, holy crap, you guys are really doing something. Because it's not national news. There's no YouTube. You've got to physically carry the evidence that you're doing anything at all to the philanthropic community, and then hope that they're going to give you $10,000 or $20,000 or maybe $50,000, which is going to keep your doors open for another 6 weeks or 8 weeks. You got to come back and do it again. I did that for years. So when people tell me, well, Van, you don't understand, you're not woke enough. I'm like, guys, I was woke before y'all had alarm clocks. I've been doing this. Like, this is not.
I was woke for so long, I took a nap for a while.
Exactly. I mean, geez. And so for me, it's been just an amazing thing to now I never have to make the case anymore that there's something wrong with the justice system.
Yeah.
People now, they believe that.
Yeah.
They didn't believe that for the 20 years I was in the streets.
No, I got to say, I even had this crazy experience. We talked about this on the show a few times because we had this series before we were on Spotify called Black Voices. It was once a month, and we talked to a lot of great activists and stuff. And I was saying I was watching, of all people, a clip of Malcolm X talking about the wealth gap primarily and recognizing like, oh my God, that guy that I thought was kind of, or I was brought up to think was kind of radical, was just literally 35 years ahead of the message. I mean, it's almost, I was shocked with how spot on what he was saying was with our current acceptance of redlining and exclusionary lending practice and all these things that we now acknowledge. And I was like, oh, wow, man, time is weird. And yeah.
I think for me now, I just find myself in such a weird position because I would like to think that those people who were marching in the 50s and the 60s, and they're thinking to themselves, we just want for our kids to be able to go to decent public schools, maybe get a degree at a Harvard or a Yale, and then when they do that, come back and give back and be a part. Then maybe they're thinking about me. Like maybe that's who they were thinking about. Like, you know, kids like me, nerdy kids who weren't going to get in a bunch of trouble because we were just too nerdy, but had a little bit of talent and had some parents that were willing to get behind us and push. And like I said, I went to the University of Tennessee at Martin undergraduate on a minority scholarship. It was really my sister's scholarship, by the way. My twin sister, Angela, was the real brains of the family. She was the star of the family. She filled out all my applications to college. She filled out all that stuff.
Essays.
All the essays. She did all that stuff. I was in my room playing with my Atari.
See, brother privilege.
Exactly. Yeah, brother privilege. So, and then she's the one that called the university and said, hey, I'm thinking about going to the University of Tennessee at Martin as well. If you let my brother in, maybe you have a set of twins for your pamphlets.
Oh.
Oh
So
my
she-
God.
I mean, so
marketing
she-
genius.
Yeah, marketing. I mean, so she's way more advanced than I was. I mean, I was totally out of it. And then once I get securely let into the school, she goes to a different school.
Oh, good
so
for her.
I'm literally going to the University of Tennessee at Martin on my sister's affirmative action scholarship.
Oh my God.
Okay. So in that
That's
situation,
a nice sister.
yeah, no, she's amazing. So in that situation, I worked very hard. I had a girlfriend who was a Black Student Alliance president at Vanderbilt. Going to visit her, I saw that there was way more education you could get, but I got a great education at the University of Tennessee at Martin for sure, and I went up at Yale. But then what happens to you is, if you really go after these dreams of trying to change stuff, you lose a lot. And when you lose a lot, you learn a lot. And if you stick with it over time, your questions don't change, but your answers start to change. Your question, how do I help these kids in the community? What do I do about the cops? What do I do about prisons? Those questions don't change, but your answers start to change. Frankly, as you just lose more.
Because you get more pragmatic, or you get wisdom? Or?
You get more pragmatic, you get more wisdom. You also get the cheat codes to the game. Because you realize, oh, I'm on the local community radio stuff talking about this thing. And now when I go and I try to talk to the mayor's office, the mayor's not going to talk to me, but the secretary knows who I am.
Sure.
She heard me on that black radio station. Now she's going to help me. And now I've got an ally. Before it was just fuck the whole system.
Yeah.
But now I've got some people on the inside who are helping me. And you just start figuring this stuff out. Over time, I've gotten to the point, people are like, man, how can you work with Republicans? How can you work with all these different people? Like, aren't you a sellout? And I'm like, I know.
Is that a critique of yours?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like,
okay, firstly, I'm unaware of that. But
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I think if you're a young, woke, black activist who's seen the Trumps of the world get away with all this stuff, who's seen the insurrectionists get away with all this stuff, you're learning every day some other outrage on social media. Here's another black kid getting shot. Here's another black kid getting disrespected. Another black kid getting shot. And you look around, here's Van Jones, who's sitting up on CNN on an air-conditioned set next to Anderson Cooper, wearing a nice suit. And then the next time you see him, he's talking to Jared Kushner, and he's talking to Newt Gingrich, and he's going to CPAC talking. Yeah, this guy is a terrible person. like there's no
right. Yeah, you're dining with the enemy. I guess,
exactly. And so part of the reason I'm having my own podcast called Uncommon Ground is I want to talk about, in this polarized world, there are some things that we got to work on together, even with people we don't agree with.
Oh, okay. So
it's the only way anything will change ever. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I have so many thoughts about this. I see this happening with Obama a lot. And by the way, as you talk about your history, it's virtually the same history. I mean, you guys both go to Ivy League schools, and you're lawyers, you're activists. You end up working as administration. It's very, very similar. And I feel like Obama gets shit sometimes too. He transcends all the things. But even he, I remember really loving him saying, if you think your contribution is screaming at people on Twitter, you're a joke. He took kind of a line that was probably to the right of where a lot of the left people are on that topic. And I had many thoughts. And I want to bring in also Accidental Courtesy. Have you seen that documentary?
I haven't seen it, but I've talked to the guy, black guy that he gets to clam people.
He's a jazz musician. Yeah, and he collects in his closet, he's got 15 robes of Klansmen they've given him as they've left the Klan. Whatever. Great documentary. And there's a moment where he's sitting down at a cafe, I want to say maybe in Memphis, and he's talking with some BLM organizers, and they're furious about this, that he would go meet them.
Right.
And here's where, as I say, as I'm trying to look through the fog, I never know when I'm on the wrong side of it, because I always hear the Martin Luther thing, beware of the white liberal, because I'm often the white liberal. It's it's going pretty good, guys. Right? It was worse.
Sure. It was worse.
Yeah, so I never know if I'm enacting that. But I will say I respected him so much in that I will meet with anybody.
Yeah.
I'll sit down with anybody. And also, this will not be a zero-sum victory for anyone. It's not ever going to happen. The left or the right will not ever win. That's not in our future. My analogy is always hey, y'all, we're married, period. This country is married.
Yep.
The blue and the red got married. Divorce is not an option.
Nope.
So do we want to live in the fucking cancerous, toxic marriage the rest of our life? Or do we want to start figuring out some tools and listening and being a little forgiving and all these things? Because I don't want to be in a shit marriage the rest of my life.
Agree.
So I look at stuff that you do and I applaud it so much. And then, of course, I have the voice going is this just the white liberal going oh, good, it's hard for me to know.
Well, what do you think? You're not a white liberal.
I'm a brown liberal, yeah. No, I totally think the hardest thing for me to see is the lack of communication and interaction, and this silo and nothing's getting done. And for me, that's just everyone's so inefficient. And the only way to get anywhere is to cross the aisle a little bit. You have to.
I came to that over time. At first, I was when you're in the berserkly
You were communist for one second, right?
I think it was can we work with the anarchists? I don't know. It's can we work with the Trotskyists? I don't know. Let's discuss this.
How trustworthy are the Trotskyists?
Yeah, exactly. So I was on the left side of Pluto, And frankly, I'm proud of it. I've never apologized for it. I mean, given what I had seen as a black kid growing up in the rural South and then seeing all this privilege at Yale and seeing all these prisons in California, like I'm proud of myself that I was willing to take on the system as best I knew how with the tools I had when I was 24, 25, 26 years old. That's also something called freedom. Like in this country, like you get to think what you want and try stuff out. And you're also free to change your mind over time as you learn more stuff. And so for me, what I eventually realized is that every time we won, got a cop fired, stopped the prison project, it was never the usual suspects by ourselves. It was always some weird, unlikely coalition, every Muppet in the Muppet Show, every color in the Skittles bag, like that somehow it all gotten together on the same side, and then we won. So they were going to build this super jail for kids in Oakland. And we thought it was terrible. And there were 5 people on the county commission, and we had 2 votes of 2 black guys that were against it. And there were 3 other people who were basically for it, and we couldn't break them. They said, we're going to build this jail for kids. We got to build this jail for kids.
These
And
kids need this
these
jail.
kids need this jail. You're not going
As
to
if
deprive
they're- yeah.
these kids of this jail. And,
You will not deprive
Yeah,
these children of their...
exactly.
They have a right to this
They
jail.
have a right to this jail. Now, of course, if our kids get on drugs, they're going to rehab. But
Yeah, that's
these
right,
kids
that's
are
right.
going to jail.
Even if my kid murders someone, we're going to another country.
Exactly.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
And so, I'm going through this fight, and what we realized, though, is that this super jail for kids in Oakland wasn't going to be in Oakland. It was going to be in the same county, but outside of Oakland. And we realized, hold on a second, I bet the people in this community where it's coming don't know.
Yeah.
So we go out there, and it's a bunch of white people, and we show up a bunch of black people from Oakland and say, how you doing?
2,000 more of us.
Exactly. There's going to be about 3,000 of us every weekend coming to see our cousins.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden,
You guys better open up a barbecue restaurant quick. 'Cause-
Exactly. You better do something. It's going to be a whole bunch of stuff happening out here. And suddenly, us anti-racists and the actual racists were arm in arm.
Yeah,
Said, hey,
bedfellows.
look, we don't want. They said,
You don't want us here. We
They said,
don't want to send our
to
kids
be out here.
Yeah.
And we won.
Yeah, wow.
And so I learned, like, hell, guys, seriously, it's always the unlikely coalition. It's always when you talk to somebody who you don't expect to have anything in common with, and then suddenly something opens up,
Yeah.
and then you're able to help somebody. So then the question is, are you concerned about image or impact?
Exactly. Do you want a solution or do you want to
Or a
just talk?
grievance. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, if you put results over rhetoric, you ultimately wind up, and at least in my experience, I have come to the conclusion, the people who I care about, the addicted, the convicted, the otherwise afflicted, they don't have a political party because they mostly don't vote or they can't vote. They don't donate. They don't really, if you're in prison, you aren't marching or tweeting. They're really the captives of the political system. They're not left or right. I've never met anybody in prison that said, Van, get me out of here. It's terrible. But whatever you do, don't work with any Republicans. I've never, you know what I mean? Like, I've never heard that in 30 years.
Right.
So I came to just decide, for me, I'm going to put what in the Christian church, we could say the least of these, the folks at the bottom, I'm going to put them first. And I'll work with or against anybody who is going to aid me in that cause.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't like that.
They don't like it.
Yeah, I find that very frustrating.
It's
you cannot.
privileged.
It is weird. Yeah, it's just like cool to be an idealist, but if that's where it stops, then who gives a shit what your grand idea was if you couldn't figure out how to enact anything? Now, I want to know really quick, how did your dad feel about you getting out of Yale and then going to pursue that? He wanted you to come back home to Tennessee, maybe?
I'll never forget one of the biggest moments of my life was after I gone to Yale. I was still a student there. I think I come home for like Thanksgiving the last year, my 3rd year. We were in Memphis with my dad's family and all his cousins and his brother giving me so much shit. Oh man, you're gonna do what? You're gonna go work for poor people? Hell with that! Like, you should go get some money. You know?
Yeah,
They
of
were-
course.
They were 100% like, man, and they were talking about what they would do if they had a Yale Law degree and all the money they'd make and the cars they'd buy and all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. And my father, who was a tough guy, ex-military guy, not a guy of a lot of words or a lot of affection, frankly, he said, leave him alone. Somebody's got to do it. He wants to do it. Leave him alone.
Well, that's nice.
And it was like silence in the house because my dad was like, he was like the alpha guy. And I was like, oh.
That's cool.
That was the first time that he had rendered any kind of judgment or opinion about what I should do or what I shouldn't do. And I kind of assumed that he, like the rest of the family, was outraged that I wasn't going to go make a bunch of money.
Yeah.
But he actually was on the other side of it.
So I wonder for him if, because I think I've been coming to terms with this a little bit personally, which is he was coming into his own in an era where some things were possible for the first time. So as you say, he became a black principal, and now his son goes to Yale. And so from the egocentric point of view, it's kind of working. Or at least it's working in his world, right? Like the progress is being made. I'm watching it real time. It's happening. My analogy that I personally think is I'll have a lot of guests on here and we'll be bonding over some trauma, some violence, some abuse, all this kind of stuff. And then I'll say like, well, but it made me me and I'm here. Well, what that ignores is that 90% of people, that stuff crushes.
Yeah.
And so just because I kind of like, I've now come to be grateful for that background, it ignores that the vast majority of people are destroyed by it.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like, oh, who gives a fuck because it made me. No, largely it's destroying everybody. Yeah. And you're kind of ignoring the vast reality of the situation because you personally maybe are finding that pathway.
Mm-hmm. I think that for my dad to be a young black guy in the 60s, as he was, military and all that, and then to come home, people, I mean, it's hard for us to imagine now. It was not an uncommon thing for somebody to go to a rally and get beaten almost to death, to have their arm broken and be held in jail for a week with no medical care. That was what it meant to go to a rally. Like we go to rallies now. It's like a parade. You know what I mean?
You hope Starbucks is open.
Yeah. Exactly. Geez, let me make sure I bring my water bottle. Everybody knew somebody who had those kind of experiences, and they really were pushing a door open that had been closed for 400 years. And so for them to be the first ones to push through and then to grab their children and push their children ahead of them.
Yeah.
And say, you guys now have to go into these buildings and go into institutions that we were kept out of.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all about managing expectations and what are realistic expectations. Mm-hmm. And so from the 60s, the expectations that he would be a principal, you'd end up at Yale. Well, anything beyond that's probably a fairy tale. Like the notion you're going to lift everyone off or reduce police brutality. You're always kind of just readjusting what is possible.
Yeah, but I definitely felt more or less consciously that my father had done so much with so little. That he had helped his brother get through college, my Uncle Milton, that he had helped a cousin get through college, that he had always been there for his family. A lot of the people who got out of poverty in my family got out of poverty on this bridge called my father's back.
Yeah.
Like he was sending money home for somebody's going to get evicted, somebody's going to lose their car, somebody's kids need something. We didn't have a lot of money, but it was going back to try to get people out. And then he became an educator, and when they gave him the school in my home county, Madison County, they didn't give him the good school with the white kids where he had been the assistant principal. They gave him the crappy school with 3 housing projects feeding into it. And he said, thank you, because I know how to deal with those kids. I was one of those kids.
Yeah.
And he became a state award-winning educator. And when he died, the line was around the church, black and white. People would stuff to say about my father and how he'd helped them. So I was very aware my father had done so much with so little.
Yeah. The area he covered.
Yeah. And so how do I, who never had to go through what he went through, and now I've got this fancy degree, I've got to at least match what he did.
That's hard.
Yeah. And then if you try to match it on a one-to-one, his resources versus his impact versus mine, I mean, how do you do that?
Yeah, you got to become president.
You got to be Obama to catch my dad. And so I've always felt that sense that I was trying to complete something that my dad had started, or maybe his dad had started, maybe his dad had started.
Yeah. Well, clearly, like your grandpa, you hung with him, you went to church. He clearly was a stand-up guy.
Yeah, sure. It was crazy because on the one hand, my dad grew up in the hood, and my mom was like the daughter of this college president.
Oh, wow.
And so they meet and then get married. So I'm in this kind of class-divided family where on the one hand, My grandfather on my mom's side is like a PhD, college president, becomes a bishop in our church, becomes a senior bishop in our church, the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, CME. And my dad is like from like Orange Mound, Memphis, like the hood of the hood.
Yeah.
And so I'm in this family where,
There's class within your family.
oh my God, you know,
Yeah.
like unbelievable. And my father,
Was your dad intimidated by any of that?
he wasn't intimidated by it. He was annoyed by it.
Sure, okay.
He was disgusted by it.
Okay.
Because
It felt upper classy kind
yeah,
of.
you know, he felt like they were looking down on him, and the only reason he felt that way is because they were. And you know, so now his father died when he was very young, but the two men in my family, I had my grandfather who was very respected, having been a college president and a senior bishop, and then my father who was very respected, having fought his way up to being a principal of a public school. And these are the two men in my family. They were very strong men. They were educators. They were educated, and they were doing what they could to try to lift up the community. So it wasn't a surprise to me that I wanted to do it that way. I think what surprised both my grandfather and my father was how radical I was in my 20s, because I was like, no, guys, you understand. I've been to the center of the society. I've been at Yale. I've seen them teaching all this stuff. And then you walk out the front door and none of it applies to black people. I'm
Yeah.
in the law school, in the library, in the Citadel, and reading all this stuff about liberty and justice for all. And I can't walk from the law library to my apartment and see any evidence of it. So now I'm pissed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You lied to me.
Yeah.
And I'm coming.
Did you have a lot of white friends when you were younger, or did it feel more segregated? Or
You know, I was part of that generation where we actually did have white and black friends. And now, of course, it's much more segregated because of private schools and stuff like that. But I was lucky. I was in that group of people. I had white friends. I had black friends. But the socialization that would happen after school was completely segregated. So we would hang out together at school. We would be in the different debate clubs and that kind of stuff together. But it never would occur to me when I had a party, a little house party. My sister had a party. I was a nerd, but my sister would have a house party.
I want to meet your sister.
Yeah, she's dope. No, my sister's dope. She's amazing. But when she would have a party at the house, it would never occur to us to invite our white friends. And also, Monday you go to school and they're like talking about the house party they had at the white. Nobody was mad.
Yeah.
It was just assumed that
Interesting.
we wouldn't socialize.
Well-
in the 70s and 80s.
As I sit here talking to you, and as I've seen you on television, you have a ton of charm and charisma, but your sister described you as like the apex nerd, like the
Yes.
most stereotypical nerd, head in a book all the time,
Yes.
hanging with granddad at a church,
Yes.
not super cool. Was that your growth into somebody who could fly to New York and go into someone's office and woo them into giving you money? Was that one of your harder challenges?
I mean, I was as nerdy as you could humanly be. I made Urkel look cool. I mean, I was...
Urkel looked like Ice Cube next to you.
Exactly. I mean, like seriously, with no joke at all. And it's hard for me even now to realize that people don't see me that way, because I still feel that way. You know?
Yeah.
I still feel like the little guy on the outside getting picked on, getting teased. I used to, when I was in junior high school, because that's, you know, really when you're getting the height, like
Lit up, yeah.
And back then, there was no such thing as bullying as a bad thing. No. It was like, you deserve to get bullied because you're a little fucking sissy.
Yeah.
And you need to fight.
Yeah,
Like,
your dad's even like, hopefully they'll teach him to be
yeah,
tough.
exactly. No, I'm serious. Like the idea, like this whole culture change where it's like bullying is bad. It's like, no. The world is tough, and you should quit being a sissy and learn how to fight.
You're gonna have to.
You're gonna have to learn how to fight.
Get with it.
Get with it. So
Yeah.
I grew up in that.
Same.
I grew up in that.
Yeah.
And so
Your dad would be like, well, you have a decision to make.
Yeah,
you want to get your
exactly.
ass beat for the next 6 years?
Yeah,
You
or
want
the
to punch
next-
this kid in the nose.
Yeah.
Those are your choices.
Those are your choices.
Do what you want to do.
Exactly. And it's so hard for people who are in their 20s now to understand, like, this is a whole new world
It's
where you can say, I'm being bullied and anybody would care. Like,
Absolutely.
Like, if you're being bullied, it's because you deserve it.
Yeah.
So
that's practice for the real world.
100%. So I would get my little tray of food in the cafeteria, and I would go out the back of the cafeteria, around the side of the building, into the gym, which was empty and dark, go to the back of the bleachers, climb up the back of the bleachers, and eat my food there.
Oh, man.
So that I didn't have to deal with the ass whooping.
Yeah. So you can get some food
So I
in
could get some
before
food
you.
in, exactly. So,
have
I mean-
the stamina to get your ass beat.
Exactly. So I'm always the first person in the cafeteria, so I can be the first person out the cafeteria. So I
In
can-
class 5 minutes early, so you can be in the hallway.
Exactly. So when I finally got to college, what saved me was my mom. My mom saved me twice. The first way she saved me was when I was 4 years old. My dad and my uncles and all those guys were belligerent and loud. And I asked my mom, I said, why are they making all this racket? She said, because they're drinking alcohol. And she said, all the men in your family have a problem with alcohol. And if you drink alcohol, you'll act just like that. When I was 4 years old, I said, I'm never going to drink.
Are you kidding me?
And I've never had a drink.
You're kidding me.
I'm not
Wow.
joking. The best decision in my life I made when I was 4 years old.
I had the same dad. My mom said the same thing, and then I had to go try it.
Well, and here we are sitting together. So
Yeah.
I guess it worked out. But for me, I was like, oh, a second, that sounds like 100% chance of an outcome that I don't think is great. And so I just went the other way. So I've never had a beer, I've never had a wine, never had a glass of champagne, never had a sip.
Never had a hangover.
Never had a hangover,
Yeah.
never had any
DUI.
None of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so that was very helpful to me. But the other thing that she did was when I got to high school, and I was not the most popular kid by far. My sister was very popular, but I was not. And every girl I liked did not even know that I existed. It wasn't like they didn't like me. It's like they didn't even know I was there.
Right. You were invisible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my mom said, Anthony, which is my birth name, she said, Anthony, this is high school. And for a lot of these kids, these are their glory years. 20 years from now, they're going to be talking about what they did in high school. This is their time. It's not your time. Your time is coming. Your time will be long after these days have faded away, and you're going to have your time later. And she said, in her southern accent, the brawny kids rule now, and the brainy kids rule later. Later is coming. And so I just hung on to that.
You had faith in that.
I hung on to that. So I got through high school. My sister got me into college, and I hit college, and I just suddenly it was okay to be smart.
Yeah.
It was okay to be smart.
It was cool to be smart.
It was cool to be smart.
Yeah. Also, can I add, you're probably different. So you're not invisible. You might even be exciting.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there are the guys in the fraternities and stuff like that, but for the political nerds and the journalist nerds and the art nerds, you have more space and you're less likely to get your ass beat in
Yes.
college.
Yeah.
And so, I just went from...
Well, you would understand this better than anyone. I get asked in interviews all the time, like, when did you want to be an actor? Did you act in high school? I'm like, are you kidding? I would not be sitting here if I acted in my high school. I would have been killed in the parking lot.
Yeah, you'd be like-
repeatedly.
Yeah.
That wasn't an option.
That was not a thing.
No, what are you talking about?
Not a thing at all. But I discovered when I got to law school that I could talk, that I could speak.
Yeah.
In college, I was a writer, I was a journalist. And then, I don't know, over time, I realized I was completely fearless in only one context, which was if there was an issue that I cared about or something I thought was wrong. Now, I was a total coward in every other situation. Like, you'll never see me on a motorcycle. You'll never see me bungee jumping. I'm never going to know how to parachute my ass up. I'm like, I would cry. I would have a heart attack before we even got up there. So, like, I'm never going to go to a bar and, like, challenge somebody to a fist fight. Like, no, I pardon me, sir. None of that. But if I saw something I thought was wrong, I was fearless about taking it on. And I think it's because I was bullied.
Yeah,
And I think it's like, I wish as a kid that somebody would have stuck up for me.
Yeah. So I fucking hate bullies.
Yeah,
I
me too.
live to fuck with bullies. Now, I went another direction, but I wasn't a nerd, but I skateboarded, I snowboarded, I had dreadlocks.
Yeah.
I
You were a weirdo.
wasn't a jock. I was a
Yeah.
weirdo, exactly. So yeah, I kind of lived as I got bigger and became an alcoholic. I kind of lived to meet that guy at the bar.
Right.
Be like, oh, high school's over, motherfucker. But so I want to go back now to, because I filed this in my head in such a specific way, displaying all my insecurities, but I went up to you last month when we met. I went up to you and I was like, hey, Van, I'm Dax. Nice to meet you. I think we had you scheduled to think, and you're like, oh, you didn't have any awareness of it from my point of view. And I was like, first of all, he has no idea who I am. B, he has no idea I have a podcast. C, the worst case scenario, he thinks I'm asking him to be on the podcast
Right
at
now.
the social situation. And I was like, this fucking went sideways in a hurry. So that was my perception of the entire thing when I walked away. But now when you say to me that you still think of yourself as a nerd, I'm like, who knows what that me walking up to you felt like? I have no clue now that I know that. Do you have any memory of me coming up to you?
I certainly do. You were one of the few actual celebrities there. Like everybody else is sort of like people who either have money or they have books or whatever.
Invented some shit.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like so. And I remember you said something about your podcast, and I felt embarrassed because I have a whole team of people whose job it is to make sure that I am where I'm supposed to be, and I respond to my emails and stuff like that. And I felt
You're panicked, maybe?
Yeah, I felt super embarrassed myself because, like, did I fuck up and not like show up in the right place, or like did I like if I like
interactions are the
made
best.
an enemy here? Did I like holy shit? Like this has gone south really fast.
Oh no!
Yeah, I was just so excited to see you, and I was excited to meet you, and I was like, oh, this will be a great starter.
Yeah.
I think you were going to do the show, and we'll do it again. And then I thought we would just ramp into something. But you're now in a panic that you fucked something up. I'm like, oh, this guy, he doesn't know me, and now he thinks I'm an opportunist who's trying to book my fucking show at this event.
Hey, you see, I'm here. I've been happy to do the show. And so back as soon as I got back, I said, hey, this guy wants to be on the show. I come on the show. And she's like, oh, but in my mind, I was like, okay, he's kind of letting me know that I've screwed up somehow.
Oh no!
Yeah, we were waiting for about 2 hours.
Exactly.
Man.
I mean, that's literally what I thought had happened. So I'm like, oh, God.
Oh my God. I can't tell you how many times we've had this on the show where it's like, I kind of go through how I met someone, and both of our opinions of what happened are so fucking.
Because it's everyone's insecurities coming together at the same time. Everyone's blinded.
Yeah,
by
I
their
might
own
have dropped his.
insecurities.
I might have dropped the ball. Fuck, I dropped the ball. Yeah.
I do think that one of the things that happens is everybody in their own mind is always a kid from somewhere.
Exactly.
Like, I'm a kid from Jackson, Tennessee. I had to fight my way with my sister's help, my family's help. I had to fight my way to get here. And at any moment, it could all just go away. And that's not how the other person sees you. They see you as wherever you are in the mountain climb. That's who you are. You've always been that.
Yeah.
Of course you're that.
Yeah. You're a handsome, fit dude who has his own show on CNN. So I'm like, oh, he's the king. So I'm going to go talk to him.
And I don't feel that way at all. There's never a day in my life where I don't feel vulnerable, where I don't feel that it could all end and I'll just be little Anthony Jones
In the bleachers.
with no friends, with no help, hiding behind the bleachers.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's never more than a fraction of a second away in my mind for myself in any situation or interaction.
Yeah.
And people who I grew up with, they're so shocked that I'm on TV and I'm talking and because my sister was the one who did all the talking. In fact, she wouldn't let me talk. She's like, I'm Angela, this is Anthony, blah, blah, blah. He was born 4 minutes before me.
They're like, she's going to be Oprah. This dude's going to fucking program computers.
No, I mean, look, in fact, a couple times I went back home to Tennessee and I would see people who I went to high school with. My high school's not that big. And they wouldn't know who I was. And I would say, hey, my name is Anthony Jones, blah, blah, blah. We were in school together, blah, blah, blah. And then my wife at the time would say, this is Angela Jones's brother. They go, oh, Angela! I love Angela. She had a brother? I'm like, we're twins. We were literally in the same class together for 12 years.
God.
What are you talking about? So for me, it's been, I've only now in my 50s begun to accept even a part of the idea that with your description, like I'm handsome and fit and these type of things.
Yeah.
That's not my daily experience of myself. My daily experience of myself is I have a lot to prove and I have a lot to do and it could all end at any point. And I really, every time I'm on TV, I'm like, if this is my last time on TV, I want to do a good job. I mean, if I give a speech, this is my last speech, I want to do a good job. If I do an interview, I want to do a good job.
Yeah.
Because I'm not a rich man's child. You know?
Yeah. Well, and also, this is just a side note, but when you were talking about your father helping family members, we had someone I was talking about, of the many, many layers one doesn't think about is that even when someone does break through that's black, a white kid that breaks through in the same way, they're generally saving whatever money they now are making in that the vast majority of black folks that break through, they're now supporting a bunch of people. So they're not acquiring or accruing all this money.
Right.
Before we talk about your documentary, which I want to, I just want to talk about another neat thing about you, I think, from the outside is, and of course, I'm naturally drawn to this life story because I'm an actor, and every actor is high, then they're low, then they're high, they're out of the business, they're back in the business. What is this? You know, it's a very insecure life. And so when I look at these chapters of your life, so as you said, you're in the Bay Area, you're doing a bunch of good work, you get burnt out. So now we kind of switch directions. You get interested in the green movement and the environment and how to perhaps fuel our economy with these advancements and include the people that have been disenfranchised. And through that process, you come to work in the Obama White House. And I didn't know this until I was researching you. I didn't know that you left under like great pressure to resign. In over what ultimately proved to be a false rumor, the dagger shot, right? So if I can bring Monica up to speed, there was this rumor that Van had signed a petition that was accusing George Bush of having allowed 9/11 to happen.
Okay.
And people just ran with that.
Yep.
They ran with that to the point where...
No facts.
Yeah, and then ultimately that organization, whatever the fuck it was called, it could have taken them 1 second at the outset of this to just go through their fucking database, but whatever, they didn't, obviously. Eventually conclude, we don't really have any digital record of Van doing anything like that. Sorry, oops.
Yeah, but by then I've been out of the White House for 9 months.
So I see your life story is not just interesting on the many levels. It would be interesting just because who you are, but the resets, man. Like, you learn more about yourself. If the ride is just that nice vertical leap, I don't know when someone learns who they are or what their real identity is or all these things. But man, to have to like leave that administration, I want to know where your head was at, what you thought you were going to do when you couldn't have imagined you would then have this career on CNN at that point. So what were you feeling and what were you thinking was your future at that point?
I didn't think I was going to have a future. I mean, to your point, I had a good run in the Bay Area in my 20s into my early 30s, taking on cops and being a part of every left-wing cause and every left-wing organization. You could not be further left than me and still be in the known universe. But in my early 30s, I became a dad. All of a sudden, you're looking around. You're no longer saying fuck the schools, you're saying fix the schools.
Right.
It's like a different mentality when you become a parent in a town and you want things to work. And also I burned out on some of the crazy stuff. And I had become more spiritually engaged, going to Buddhist retreat centers and that type of stuff, just trying to heal. And I discovered a lot of the ecological solutions. I'm like, how come when I go to Marin County, there's like hybrid cars and solar panels. When I go to Oakland, 20 minutes away or 40 minutes away, it's asthma inhalers and smokestacks. I said, we need green jobs, not jails. Like, we need to bring these things together. So I started trying to bridge those gaps. Wind up with something called the Oakland Green Jobs Corps, where we convinced the city of Oakland to start teaching black kids to put up solar panels as a way to fight pollution and poverty at the same time. Nancy Pelosi had just become Speaker of the House across the bridge in San Francisco. She says, this is amazing, takes me to Washington, D.C. I get a chance to testify in front of a bunch of her committees. All of a sudden, we've got a bill called the Green Jobs Act that George W. Bush signs to spread my program across the country through the Department of Labor. All of a sudden, in just that 18-month period, I go from this marginal activist who's F the police guy to somebody who's got the president signing my bill.
Policy,
at the federal level. And then wrote a book about it. The book became a bestseller. Somebody in Obama's camp reads the book. Boom, I'm in the White House. Like, you know.
Are you like, this is what my mom was talking about. It's my time.
Exactly. And then 6 months later, the right wing says, hold on a second.
This guy's a radical.
Berserkly, F the police. Like
Hugo
Marxist,
Chavez is
like what the heck? And so Glenn Beck started raising holy hell on Fox News about it. And they found a videotape where I called like Republicans assholes, which then they started acting like assholes about it. So kind of proved my point. However, the crazy thing about it was when I was in the White House, I was one of the few people in the building that was working to build support in Appalachia for what we were doing. I was calling into right-wing radio stations trying to build support. So I was actually one of the few people in the administration who was passionate about, we've got to bring the Republicans on board. I'm from the red states. I understand their concerns.
Yeah.
So I would get on the radio and say, hey, look, they say, okay, we're going to have somebody from the Obama administration, some green guy. Let's see what he has to say for himself. And I would come on and I'd kick their ass. And I'd say, how come, I just want to know how come you guys want China to beat the United States in the next technological revolution?
Ooh, okay.
That's a good way in. Yeah.
Just kick them right in the teeth. Say, I don't understand why you want China to beat the United States in the next technological revolution. I don't understand why you want us to lose.
Why you love China so much?
Exactly. And they're like, what?
Why are you a Chinophile?
Exactly. And so I was doing, and I was making sure that we were getting support to Appalachia and all that kind of stuff, as well as Michigan and other places I cared about. So I was doing a good job, and then suddenly it just got to be too much because it started to snowball. This guy Van Jones, he's a communist, he's a Marxist, he's a radical, and it's getting bigger and bigger online, it's getting bigger and bigger on Twitter, it's getting bigger and bigger on Fox News, and then they come with the lie that I'm a 9/11 truther. I'm like, look, even when I was a radical, I wasn't that out there. So,
right.
And I just didn't have it, man. I ran.
Yeah.
I hid behind the bleachers.
Yeah, of course.
And I didn't have the fortitude.
That's really huge of you to say, because you could easily hang it on, I respected Obama so much I didn't want to distract.
That was a part of, but I just didn't have it.
Right.
I just didn't have it. My dad was a tough motherfucker. He was tough. You could smash him in the head with a hammer and he'd be like, he wouldn't flinch.
Yeah.
I was never tough.
Okay.
I was resilient. I'd come back.
Yeah.
But I would feel it. And I would cry. And my dad hated to see a black boy crying. He just, that was not a part of the code.
Right.
And so I didn't have.
By the way,
yeah.
And you got to have sympathy for him now, which is the fear now that as a dad is like, I don't want this guy to get eaten
to be
up.
a victim, yeah. Exactly. So you wind up victimizing them ahead of time.
Even worse.
Exactly. I'm going to victimize you because I love you so much. I want you to actually have all the pain now with me.
This one sanctuary where you could be happy, I'm going to destroy too.
Exactly. To make sure you're ready for the world out there that's terrible. So I didn't have it. I didn't have it. And when I resigned, look, I did feel, Obama didn't ask me to resign. Nobody asked me to resign. But I did feel that I was there to protect and defend Obama. Mm-hmm. He wasn't there to protect and defend me. And I did feel that if you're White House staff and you become the issue, if you can't figure out a way to fix it, you need to get the hell out of there because nobody elected you. They elected the big guy. And so I said, I'll fall on my sword. Nobody tells you in the next scene, you're still on the ground with a fucking sword in your gut. Right, and you're going, ow, 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 ow. Like the camera moves on, the plot moves on, but you're still there.
Yeah. Someone might visit your grave later.
Yeah, somebody might. Maybe at the end.
Think of you kindly.
Exactly, but if you're Black Widow, they don't even do that. It's all about Tony Stark. They don't even care. So I was Black Widow, man. I sacrificed myself like nobody cared. For all you Avenger fans out there.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
And it took me about a year and a half, almost 2 years, to be able to put my brain back together. Luckily, Nola Way Rooks and Cornell West at Princeton reached out to me to give me a teaching post there. Prince reached out, and I worked with him on some of his philanthropic stuff. Different people reached out to try to help me.
Did you say Prince?
Yeah, Prince.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it like when Prince reaches out?
Life-changing, I will say.
Yeah.
The nerdy kid, Prince calls the nerdy
from
kid?
Paisley Park?
Yeah. Literally, he called. He had tried to help me anonymously earlier with the green stuff, which he liked a lot and believed in, but we'd never really spent any time together. You always remember who's there for you when things go bad.
Yeah.
Al Gore called me after I resigned from the White House, and he said, well, Van, I lost a much better job in the White House than you did. So that was
Sure,
good.
sure.
That was good perspective. Donna Brazile called me, and Prince called. Bill Clinton sent me a letter, and everybody else treated me like a leper. It was unbelievable, night and day. When you're in the White House, your phone's ringing all the time. It's buzzing. You get BlackBerry in those days. And literally the next day, I thought my phone was dead.
Right, you're calling AT&T like,
Exactly.
shut off my service.
Exactly. I mean, like literally treated like a leper. But Prince called and he said, this is Prince. And I said, hi. He goes,
Is this Van Jones?
he says, you're the most controversial man in the world right now.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
If you give me a week to write this phone call, I couldn't come up with it that good.
And I said, well, for better or for worse. He goes, I think for the better. I want you to come see me. Click.
Click.
I'm sending the Batmobile.
He literally just, I want you to come see me. He just hangs up.
Yeah, you figure it out.
Now, it's a blocked number.
Sure.
I have no idea how to call the guy back. I'm like, am I like hallucinating or whatever? So about 15 minutes later, somebody calls me and says, oh, this is so-and-so from the Prince camp. He said, you're supposed to come out here. Do you need help? Blah, blah. I said, I don't even know where it is.
It's cold, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Drive till it's cold.
But Prince was like that. I would say I spent 6 or 7 years with him after that and before he passed away. And what I would say about him is he was the worst best friend you'd ever have.
Ooh.
He was the worst best friend in that Prince was never there for you when you didn't need him. When you didn't need him, he was never there for you.
Yeah.
I got a TV show, he didn't call.
Yeah, right.
Positive things happened, he didn't call. But if anything bad happened, he was never not there.
Yeah.
If you had a bad day, before you even knew you were having a bad day, he's calling. So he had this weird kind of sense of he wanted to be there for you when he figured nobody else would be.
When it counted.
When it counted.
And I have to assume you guys must have seen eye to eye. He was secretly a very shy person, wasn't he?
You know, shy is an interesting word. He was very...
He was a little guy growing up.
Sure.
In a place that wasn't celebrated.
Right. Well,
And he was artistic and creative and different.
He somehow found something in himself that was true to him. I asked him, I said, because he's 10 years older than me, I said, do you know that when you guys were tearing it up in Minneapolis and you were doing all the stuff you're doing and you're wearing mascara and pumps and all this stuff and you could still take somebody's wife and like...
Can of hairspray every day.
Exactly. I said, you guys know, I said, did you know you were creating bedlam in the high schools? Like, you put up Prince's poster, you have to have a fight with your dad because if you were a guy, you think you were gay. If you were a girl, you would want to sleep with black guys. And, I mean, it was like the whole thing was complete pandemonium.
Yeah.
I said, did you know that? And he said, no, I didn't know that. And I said, you were causing a lot of controversy. He says, we were just trying to be ourselves.
I'll add, though, there's a very interesting chapter of Prince's life where he is on the road with Rick James.
Early.
And that's a pivotal moment in his life, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think he was competitive.
Yeah, he was.
And so you had Rick James, and he was opening for Rick James. And Rick James used to watch him, and he was pissed. He's like, why is this little motherfucker got so much swagger? He drove him nuts. And I think Prince fed on that.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. I mean, Prince wanted to be the best in the world at everything he did, and I think he probably was the best in the world.
Yeah.
But he reached out to me, and so over those couple of years, I was able to find my way to try again, to try to make a difference. It was the hardest time of my life because my kids were very little, and you aren't guaranteed a second chance in this country.
Yeah.
I had kind of gone in some ways, I would say from victory to victory in a certain respect. Not I'm saying I won all the time.
Yeah.
But there was always a sense of forward momentum, that there was another chance. And then suddenly you're a pariah. And in Washington, D.C., if you lose a top job, people act like it's contagious. Like I would walk on the subway cars and people would literally go to the other end of the car. They were afraid that Fox News was going to get a picture of me with them. I mean, it was nuts.
That's really funny.
No, I mean, it's like literally people are like, they see you and they realize who you are.
Hey, man, don't stand next to me, man. I don't want people to think we're talking or something.
Hey, brother, I'm telling you, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And it was nuts, and it was tough.
You were COVID patient one.
Exactly. I was really patient zero for cancellation. I was patient zero. I was the first person that they took some shit totally out of context, and they blew it up all over the place, and I got canceled. There was the term cancellation didn't exist then.
Yeah.
But it was just like this crazy thing had happened. Look, everybody knew that Van was like a berserkly radical. In his 20s, this guy's in his 40s. He's like passionate about the fact that what I loved about Obama, no red states, no blue states, the United States. And that this was the administration, even if they hated us, Obama was willing to sacrifice his presidency, to sacrifice his majority in Congress, to pass a health care bill, to get doctors to babies in red states whose parents were calling him the N-word every day. That he was so committed to helping everybody. Because, I mean, the red states were going to be the main beneficiaries of Obamacare.
Oh, yeah.
By far. But until he was willing to lose his majority, he was willing to risk everything. His mom had died of cancer. He understood, and he wasn't going to be held back by the fact that this backlash was coming against him. And I love that about him. And I believe in that. I believed in it then. I believe in it now. And to not get a chance to be a part of that administration, to have to leave with my head held low, to have to turn that badge in and walk out of the door.
Not be along for the whole ride.
And not be along for the whole ride and have to watch it from the sides. And
That's heartbreaking.
that was tough.
Yeah. So I had not nearly the world stage, but, I spent 2.5 years of my life making a movie, writing it, then directing it, editing, blah, 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 came out tanked. And so it was really back to the drawing board for me, just in an identity sense. I was like, I'm a writer-director. That's what I'm going to do for the next decade, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, you're not.
Yeah.
That's when I think I've never had more gratitude for my role as a dad.
Yeah, man.
I mean, that saved me. I got to say, I don't have kids in that situation. I don't know that I navigate out of it, but it was just the perfect amount of like, get real, get over yourself. That's not important. This thing is important. And ultimately, I'm so grateful for that. And I wonder if you must have been able to lean on that a bit in that time.
Yeah, my boys.
They're gorgeous, by the way. I've seen them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think we've done a good job of keeping them out of harm's way. Like, there's, we don't put them on my social media page, that kind of stuff. So people know I have kids, but they don't really know that much about them, which I like. But for me, when Cabral was born, my big boy was born, it was the first time I felt like I was on planet Earth. Up until then, I'd been up in my head, and I was doing this, and I was doing that. I was rushing around, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm a part of something.
Yeah.
I have a father and a mother, and I have a child, and I'm no longer just this projectile fired out of my parents' home into my own adventures. I'm suddenly a part of something.
You're kind of the bridge now.
I'm
weirdly.
the bridge,
Yeah.
and these guys are going to be around, God willing, long after I'm gone, and I want to make sure that things work out for them. Now I'm not just fighting against bullies and bad guys. I'm fighting for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember as soon as I saw him, I was like, I can't remember not knowing this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just like,
Oh, that's a great way to say it.
you know what
yeah.
I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
this is the beginning of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what I was doing 20 minutes ago, but whatever it was stupid. This is the beginning.
Well,
of my
as
life.
a daydreamer, as a fantasizer, as someone that lives in their head,
Yeah.
there's a lot of future surfing, and that experience definitely puts you in the now.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's crying now.
Yeah, exactly.
As a diaper
Pooping
there.
diapers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think being a dad and I think raising black boys, all this stuff becomes very real.
I can imagine that you never feel bad for yourself. It's not that you're not like a self-pitier. But to then have this beautiful creature and to actually look at this beautiful creature and go, oh my God, because his skin's black, this is going to be a much different fucking ride. And this kid who I know him on a cellular level, deserves much better.
Yeah.
In a way that you might not even care about your own self.
Yeah, we're very lucky that both the boys have done pretty well. They pretty much stay out of trouble. They're good kids. But I remember telling Jana, I said, we're putting everything on these kids. We're not like, oh, well, should they go to public school because blah, blah, blah. Look, whatever the best school, if the best school is a public school, they're going there. Best school is private school, they're going there. I'm not taking a risk for my politics on this guy. And
I can.
Yeah, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Different situations.
Yeah,
That's
but
my
you
point.
can.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah.
like, look, I've got
Yeah.
to give this guy every ace card I can give him,
Fuck
every
yeah.
joker I can give him. If I've got to go and like print up some ace cards, real to give him.
Yeah.
I've got to
wash a dean's car.
Yeah, like whatever it takes, and and the same for the little guy as well. Like I said, these guys, they got to have a good running start because it's not going to be a fair race for these guys. And now the big guy this time next year he'll be going to college, and I'll never forget. We put him on a bus, DC area. And he's 5 years old, going to kindergarten, and maybe a week later, I resigned from the White House. So he's coming home from school,
Oh my God.
and I'm crumpled up in bed, and he's not used to that.
Yeah.
He doesn't remember. I asked him, I said, you remember when I was like, oh, no, not really.
I'd rather not think of you that way.
But that's the thing is when people go through all this stuff and, people will love to cancel people and cancel people and cancel people and cancel people. And you don't understand.
There's a real human being that goes home to their family.
It's fun and games for you on Twitter. Mm-hmm. It's fun and games for you on your podcast. Fun and games for you, whatever. It's, oh, well, this guy's the person everybody's taking a shit on today. This is the woman everybody's got to prove that we're.
It's so fucking weak, can I just say?
Yeah.
To jump on.
Yeah,
Well,
jump
that's such a
on the
weak move.
bandwagon, be an asshole, whatever. And for you, it's just, hey, today everybody's talking shit about this person. Let me get my licks in.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you, actually, when you're talking about Glenn Beck. Have you ever had the perspective of oh my God, man, they were just feeding the machine. Now, I don't know. It could have been totally personal, but also it could have been just people feeding this machine. And then you're the victim of feeding this machine. The guy's got to talk about something for an hour.
Well, actually, I've gotten to know him.
He's not a piece of shit.
And I respect him a lot more
Oh, wow.
than I thought I would.
Uh-huh.
He thought, and again, how we talked earlier, people get he thought that I was coming for him because an organization I've been a part of starting called colorofchange.org put up a petition saying because he had called Obama a racist that he should be fired. Now, I had not been a part of colorofchange.org for years, since Hurricane Katrina.
Uh-huh.
And I'm now in the White House. I have no idea what these guys are doing, but my name is still on the website
Okay.
as a founder.
All right.
So now this organization's firing at him. He looks up and he goes, who's Color Change? Van Jones. Isn't this guy in the White House? Holy shit, Obama's coming for me through Van Jones, through Color of Change. Figure out who the hell Van Jones is.
Uh-huh.
So he's firing back.
And then he sees that you're a part of the 9/11 truthers.
In fact, the weird thing is he never jumped on that.
Oh, he didn't. Okay.
Ironically, everybody else jumped on that. He stayed with the Marxist, black nationalists, all the stuff from my 20s.
And you supported someone that was incarcerated that was a hot button?
Yeah, sure. Mumia Abu-Jamal,
Yeah,
who's
yeah.
a Black Panther who I think is unjustly, incarcerated and still do to this day. And he just beat the crap out of me every day on the news and kind of was like the meat tenderizer for then when everything else started to move. But I got a chance to sit down and talk with him. It's amazing when you have that connection with somebody. That was a big springboard for his career. And it was also a big breakdown for my career. He wouldn't be where he is if that hadn't happened. Frankly, I wouldn't be where I am if it hadn't happened, because if he hadn't come after me, I would have stayed in the administration and then maybe I would be more plastic, because there is something that happens to you in those positions, in those roles where everybody's kissing your ass all the time, where you do lose a little bit of your humanity and your humility. I didn't just get humbled, I got humiliated.
Yeah.
And I had to rebuild and come. And so I think I have a little bit more of my humanity intact than a lot of people who go through government. And we sat down and talked, and we came to an understanding about what he was going through at that point in his life. He would have handled it differently. Obviously, he disagrees with my politics even to this day.
Sure.
But he would.
That's fine.
Yeah, but he would have handled it differently. And I would have, hopefully, even if I thought it was the right thing to do, to walk away, been able to, I hope, I don't know if it's true, I hope that I have something in myself now that's mine. It's not referencing public success. It's not referencing where I went to school. It's not referencing my achievements. At that time, I was like an Easter egg with all this kind of accomplishment painted on the outside and nothing on the inside. So when I got smashed, I got smashed. There was
Right.
nothing else in there. You rip away all that stuff and there's nothing. My hope is that I have something in myself that is just me, no matter what, in my relationship to my faith and my belief that God loves us, period, and that we have purpose, period. And even if you wind up homeless, you can help the next homeless person sitting next to you. You can always do something good. And so that's really where I hope I've arrived. But again, people meet you. They say, hey, you're on TV. You got those cheekbones. You must have had a great life.
Yeah.
And you work with Republicans. You must have moderate politics.
You're 7 years older than me. You look 4 years younger.
Well, I appreciate
Fuck
that.
you.
But everybody's got a story. And if you know that everybody's got a story, you withhold judgment. And this idea, you cancel people, you destroy them. The next morning, when you're not thinking about it anymore.
Oh, you're on to the next
You're on
person.
the next
Yeah,
person. You're on
yeah.
the next joke. You're on the next stick. But they're in their bed curled up with their 5-year-old kid looking at them, wondering if their dad is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you got to make sure it's worth it when we do this to people.
Fuck.
Yeah.
That's so true. I'm so impressed that you sat down with him, and now I'm embarrassed I called him a piece of shit. I really do find him a little repugnant. But anyways,
That's allowed.
Fair,
That's
yeah.
allowed.
one of my family members has gone absolutely berserk, where people have had to block them on email because they send emails that are like, "Dear infidels." It's crazy. And I attribute a lot of his gateway to Glenn Beck. He became obsessed with Glenn Beck, and then all of a sudden he's writing infidel. Anyways, more importantly, because I think you and I have this same ache in our heart at the divide. I think I got that from you when I met you last month, and I think that's what I spoke on too, which is just like my personal take on it is the way out, in my opinion, is to first recognize people don't necessarily stand for something as much as they're terrified of some things. They're actually united. I think the vast majority of people in these two camps are united by the things they're afraid of. So on the left, we're terrified of global warming. We're terrified of homelessness and kids being sick and kids, these are the things we're afraid of. And on the right, they're afraid of terrorism. They're afraid the country's going to change into something that they don't recognize, that wasn't their grandparents, and that there's this 300,000 people at the border. They feel like they're being invaded. There's all these things. In this last election cycle, I really felt like I just recognized oh, I get it. These are two parties with two different sets of fears. Yeah. And so instead of me bludgeoning someone on the right over the head with the data of immigration, let's talk about what you're afraid of. And let me really give a fucking steelman argument for why you're feeling afraid, because I don't want anyone to feel afraid. I recognize what it's like to be fearful. Let's tend to that. I just feel like if we can tend to that, some way we can kind of start. Yeah. And you have a very specific approach, which I like, but it's not dissimilar, which is so many of these issues. In fact, most of the issues are cutting right through this arbitrary mental construct of left and right. And so I think drugs, you spoke beautifully on. I was not in the hate Trump camp in the same way my peers were. In that I just kept checking in with, well, what's really changed? I kept kind of looking at the metrics. I'm like, yeah, that guy's a bozo, but what's going on? The one time where I was like, oh, he just shit the bed even for his party was when he made fun of Biden for having a son that was an addict. I was like, oh man, even the people on the right that love them are like, no thanks. Because every one of us has an addict in our family or are an addict, like me. What are you talking about, left or right?
Look, I think that for those of us who are on the left and who are progressive, the fear of fascism is real. The fear that having a white supremacist with power, it's just a nightmare for people. And Trump kept playing with that. Now, I don't think Trump is a white supremacist. I think he's a racial opportunist.
I do too, which is an unpopular opinion.
Yeah, but in order to be a white supremacist, you have to feel that white people are great and that people of color are not. I think Trump thinks that Trump is great and everybody else sucks.
Yeah,
that's a very good observation. Everyone's a piece of shit but him.
Yeah, so I think he's a racial opportunist, which in some ways is a lot worse and very, very dangerous. But I understand the fear. But for me, people say, how can you work with these? You go to Appalachia, to your point. You work with coal miners, Van Jones. You work with, the last time I went to jail, I was marching with coal miners in a successful fight to get them their health care and pensions back. I wasn't marching with Black Lives Matter. The last time I went to jail, I was marching with coal miners. Well, how can you do that? They're Republican and you'll never change them.
Will you do a Fromer's guide of best jails in America? Just side note. In your retirement, maybe?
I could do it.
Okay.
I could do it.
Because I got to decide where I want to get arrested.
I could do it. I would not recommend West Virginia, but I could do it. But that whole thing, like, man, you're never going to change these people. I said, no, you understand. I'm not trying to change these people. I'm trying to make sure that the situation doesn't change me. I don't want to become what I'm fighting. I don't want to become hateful. I don't want to become bitter. I don't want to write off whole sections of the country. I don't want to feed what I'm fighting. I don't want to become what I'm fighting. I believe in certain things. I'm still a 2008 Barack Obama hope and changer. No red states, no blue states, just the United States. I'm not going to let anybody change me. I need Republicans, and Republicans need Democrats. We need each other. If you left it up to me as a Democrat, we'd be out of money real fast.
We'd be Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, we'd be we'd be broke because I'd be like, hey, look, how are we going to feed all the children or whatever? Like, I need Republicans pushing back and saying, how much does this cost?
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for it? Like all the things that they push back on. And they need me to push back on, hey, well, what about the people who are left out? It's that debate. It's that back and forth that in a healthy...
It's discourse.
It's discourse. Now, to the extent that you have people who are on the right who now are willing to throw away democracy because they're so concerned about the culture war, that's a problem. To the extent you have people on the left who used to be about free speech and used to be about due process, who are willing to throw that out the door to be a part of the woke wars, that's a problem. But I'm not going to let the mistakes on either side...
Of the shoulders, let's add. That's really important to remember.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't like when the right sums up the left by looking at the last 3% of the communists.
Yeah. Here's what I believe. I'll say it with some authority. Because I deal with people in the streets, people in the suites. I deal with Silicon Valley, Wall Street, Hollywood, Washington, D.C., and Appalachia, and the hood, and the barrios, and the Native American reservations, and the border. I can say with some real authority, the problem is not what people think it is. People think the problem is we have so many awful people in this country, usually in the other party or in the other racial group, and they're so awful that we can't get anything done. Because
they're evil.
Yeah, we have these evil, awful people in the other racial group, the other party, the other region, and we can't get anything done because these awful people. I will tell you, there are some awful people. It's true. It's the smallest problem we have. The biggest problem is we have all these awesome people in both parties, all races, all faith groups, who just don't know what to do. They just don't know what to do. And if you gave them the opportunity to help somebody, they would run over you to do it. If you gave them the opportunity to do something positive, they would do it. But the problem is we don't give them that. We just give them more reason to blame and be mad at somebody else. And so we don't have an awful people problem so much as we have an awesome people problem. And I'm focused on the awesome people. I want to bring the awesome people together to help people get stuff done. That's what my life is about. I'm not going to let the far left or the far right or anybody else change me from that, because like I said, every time I've seen something work, it's been when you've had this unlikely mix of people, you know, a business guy and a rapper and a housewife and a priest.
How about that fucking picture of Trump and Kim Kardashian? You're like,
yeah, sure. I was there for
You're
that.
doing something with Kim, right?
Well, she's in the documentary.
Yeah, absolutely. So me and Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump and a bunch of formerly incarcerated people and Ivanka and Jared, and we got 20,000 people, by some counts, out of federal prison through the First Step Act that Trump signed. Trump signed the bill, handed me the pin in the Oval Office. It's like weird stuff like that is the only time I've seen it work. And so for me, you can put a gun in my mouth right now. I'm never going to say anything different. I can tell you, if you have a real problem, if you have a little shitty problem, you can get it done with you and your roommate and a hamster in your back pocket. But if you got a real problem, the chance of you solving it by yourself with only people who look just like you, pray just like you, vote just like you is zero. If you got a real problem, you're going to need a whole different kind of coalition. If you're poor, if you're in prison, if you're on drugs, if you've got a bunch of real problems, you're not sitting there saying, hey, only let the socialists come and help me. You will take help from wherever you can get it, and you're going to need it, because the level of help that's needed to deal with these issues is not locked up in one party or one racial group.
Brene Brown detailed this beautifully when she said, you know, she was in Houston during the floods from the hurricane, and there were boats driving around and they were rescuing people. And she said, I didn't hear one person ask, who'd you vote for before they helped them in a boat?
Right.
And nor did I ask the people getting rescued. They didn't ask who you voted for. And this is your approach, as I understand it, which is like, let's first talk about something that we're both kind of devastated by. Let's forget that other thing. So you lost someone, you lost a kid to an opioid overdose. You lost, a daughter for the... Let's start there.
Yeah. The documentary you're talking about, which is called The First Step, which in some ways chronicles our successful effort to get Republicans and Democrats to come together during the Trump administration to pass legislation to let people out of jail. And it happened, and it was so shocking to people that it's almost like it never happened. I'm like, no, we got 87 senators.
You're right, because it doesn't fall into the narrative of either side.
Yeah.
I know.
For either side.
We need a fucking third rail here.
We got 87 U.S. senators, and would have been 88 if Lindsey Graham had gotten off the plane in time. We had 87 U.S. senators in the middle of the Trump administration come together to pass criminal justice reform, and Trump signed the bill in the Oval Office, handed Van Jones a pen, and it went down the memory hole. It's just too weird. So we have a documentary called The First Step to talk about it. Kim Kardashian was a part of it, Jared Kushner, Ivanka Trump, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris. It was like the craziest.
You interviewed Trump as well?
I didn't interview Trump. I just worked with him to get the bill signed.
Right. Okay. I just, in reference to the documentary, I saw that he was.
No, well, he's in the documentary.
He is in there, but of footage.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of those things where some things you have to see to believe, but sometimes you have to believe to see. If you don't believe that the pain of people at the bottom is so severe that even in the middle of the Trump administration, Democrats and Republicans could link arms to do something to help the people in federal prisons, you won't see it. But it actually happened.
Yeah.
And we have a documentary that shows it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't fit the narrative. Look, man, I've had a weird life. Like, not that many people have gotten a chance to grow up on the edge of a small town in the rural South in the 70s when all the stuff that people were talking about was in our face, or to go to an Ivy League school and come out and sue cops, or work for Barack Obama, or get a chance to work with Prince, or get a Donald Trump or George W. Bush to sign legislation to help black people. But I've done those things.
Yeah.
I've experienced those things. And so you can't get me to then turn around and act like it's not possible.
Yeah.
Or act like
Yeah,
it's it's like it can't happen.
You're a victim of some success.
Yeah.
really.
Right. I mean, so people say, look, you're supposed to hate all these Republicans. I'm like, well, reality is both political parties signed off on mass incarceration. It was Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich. It was Texas and California that built all these prisons. I can't just come down on one party. And by the way, both political parties have been doing better on my issue. I've been able to work with Republican governors and a Republican president, as well as Democratic leaders and activists. So I can't just praise one party. You're praising the Republicans. Oh my God, you praised Donald Trump. Yeah, the one time he did something good.
Yeah.
Now the 99 times he did something bad, I kicked his butt.
Yeah.
You can't praise him. I said, you can't praise him when he's right?
Yeah. You don't have integrity if you can't do that.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I just appreciate being a part of this conversation and being a part of your podcast, because I think trying to have real conversations, which is, I think, where you're just doing such a great job, and being so open and so vulnerable about your own journey as a white guy, as an addict, as a dad, like more of that stuff needs to happen. And, you know, for me, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in this country. I don't know what's going to happen to me. All I know is I believe, and based on evidence, not based on just guessing, there's a lot more good in this country than bad. There's a lot more good people in this country than bad. And we're not giving the good people a shot. In fact, we're punishing good people. If they want to reach out, you get canceled for reaching out to a quote unquote bad person more than the bad person. And that's never going to get the problem solved. And so Uncommon Grounds is my podcast coming out about that. And then we have the first step, which is a documentary about that.
Now, I'm halfway through the documentary. I love it. It's very, very well done. Back to talking to the wrong people. What is ironic is, of course, when Obama said, you know what, of course I will talk to Ahmadinejad. Is that who he was willing to talk to, that the right was up in arms about? And I remember thinking, like, what plan includes talkings off the table? I mean, that's a non-starter. If you can't talk to someone with an opposing opinion, build a wall around your face. Like, what are you going to do? And so we were, of course, very supportive of, like, yeah, of course. Were we going to find out that there's one element of him that we find sympathetic, and then our whole argument's going to collapse? Is that what you're afraid of? Is your opinion that shaky that you might find something about this person? But then we did it when Trump said, I'm going to go meet Kim Jong-un. I didn't give a fuck. Go meet that guy, you know, whatever. But the people on the left were like, how could he go meet, you know, this guy's about, and I'm like, everybody, we got to agree to some belief in talking to one another.
Well, I mean, the problem that happened to us during the Trump years was we were always on 10.
Yeah.
Every day.
Everything was existential.
Every day was the end of the republic. Every tweet was the end of American democracy. Everything that he did, because we said something to ourselves, which was, I think, very destructive, which was, we can't normalize him. Well, once you sign up for an anti-normalization plan, that means you're a slave, because then everything he does, you have to react to. And I just said, listen, if somebody's the president of the United States, that's now normal. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to normalize myself being insane every day. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look and try to figure out, from my constituency, the addicted, the convicted, the afflicted, where are there cracks where I get something done for them? If it's opportunity zones, I'll look into that. Criminal justice, help for black colleges, I'll look into that. Because here's what I know for sure. It's hard to get anything done for that population Democrats or Republicans. We don't have a great track record of getting something done for people at the bottom, no matter who's in the office. But I know this for sure. No matter how much good we do with this bill or that bill, African Americans, on the whole, are the most politically sophisticated group in Western civilization. We went from property to president in 5 generations. Very smart. Financially, maybe not so smart all the time, but politically, very sophisticated.
Yeah.
And I knew for sure that we could get a few things done on criminal justice, on black colleges or whatever, and still the black community was going to say, thank you for those little morsels. However, in your totality, we need a different president.
Yeah.
So we could, for the first time, get something good out of an administration and at the same time, probably help to replace that administration. In other words, let's be as sophisticated as the shit that we're trying to challenge. And other people felt if Trump does anything good for black people, all the black people are going to somehow vote for him. And I said, guys, we're not that stupid.
No one's giving them enough credit. Anyone enough credit.
I got to say, one of the things that doesn't really get talked about is black folks have to be more pragmatic.
Yeah.
They don't have the luxury to have an ideal, not listen to anybody else, not cooperate. No. There's the North Carolina governor who turns out he went in blackface somewhere.
Oh, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
And our guy we interviewed, he was pretty vocally supportive of sticking with him.
Yeah, I think it was Governor Northam. Yeah, because they said, look, sure, the guy did blackface, but if you get rid of him, the next person also did blackface, and the next person is a Republican.
Or, yeah, maybe even worse, the guy didn't do blackface, but he fucking actually hates black people that wants to see him.
Yeah.
And so to be in a situation to be so disenfranchised that you kind of got to go like, well, fuck, I'll take this dude in blackface because it'll probably be more beneficial to me. Again, not being that way is kind of a luxury.
Look, like I said, the black community, most politically sophisticated community in Western civilization, not just the United States. We got Biden because black voters said, you know what, we love you, Bernie, but we know white people who don't live in Vermont a lot better than you do.
Exactly.
And this is not going to work out well. And as much as we like all your policies and that type of stuff, we're going to give you Biden. It wasn't white people who said Biden. It was black people who said, look, guys, we know white people very well. This is all the Democrat they can take.
Yeah.
They can't take the lesbian of color in the wheelchair with the mark. No, they're not ready.
Yeah.
And so, again, that sophistication to say, and we're not even going to back a Cory Booker. We're not even going to back a Kamala Harris. We're not even going to back one of our own because we understand that the white folks that we know are still so freaked out from Obama that they are not ready. We're going to give them Biden.
Yeah.
Now, that is politically sophisticated.
It's savvy,
It is,
Savvy
yeah.
at a very high order. And I come out of that. I come out of that kind of, look, I went to the far edges of leftism, but my home base is just that good small town, small church, pragmatic. Look, you can only fight people so much because you're going to see the same people at the laundromat next weekend you saw this weekend. You got to find some common ground. You got to know the name of people's kids. You got to, even if you know they're racist and they hate you. I tell you what, growing up in the rural South, and you blow a tire and you're sitting on the side of the road, white guy comes by, Confederate flag, gun rack in the back, pulls over, you're happy. Because that motherfucker's about to change your tire.
Yeah.
And then go home and say, hey, I just helped an N-word with their tire.
Yeah. Stupid. This guy couldn't even change a tire.
Exactly. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so when you grow up in the complexity of the reality of how this stuff works, it's like, guys, you can't just sit in your little blue bubble and think you know everything and treat the red part of the country like, quote unquote, dumb fuckistan, that you know everything and they're all stupid. And all you need to do is conquer them and convert them to the NPR religion and force feed them some kale.
Hit them over the head with a biology book 1,000 times.
And then that's how America's going to be better. That's just not how it works. And having grown up in the middle of the country, I know better.
I do think that there's a privileged point of view, and I mean privileged in that, like, it's special minorities in this country because my parents are the same and I grew up in Georgia. And during the election, everything, it was like, okay, who is the best bet? Not who do we like?
Exactly.
Like, not even policy, just who's the best bet here? What's the most rational, pragmatic way to go about it? And it's such a different conversation that I have with my family than I have here with my girlfriends here. Like, it's just because they can see it in a way that very liberal people can't, or white, I don't know, like majority can't.
No, I'll say it. Like, you have learned how to navigate a system. So the dude with the Confederate flag pulls over. It's like, not ideal, but I'm going to take this tire change. You were forced to learn to navigate a system that wasn't necessarily benefiting you.
And all minorities are, because they got here.
Yes.
They figured out a way to get here. They figured out a way to be successful here. That requires negotiating.
And compromise. And so, there's a certain reality that is forced upon you when you're not growing up with all the benefits of being white and potentially rich and educated and all these things. They're not even used to a compromise. Like, what do you mean I wouldn't vote for who I most want? That's the
Right,
point of the
exactly.
election. Like, they would be very indignant about that. Like, well, this isn't even a democracy if I'm not voting for the right. But yeah, anyone else who understands is going to go, I got to get the person that's going to win. Yeah. Van Jones, you're radical. I really have enjoyed talking to you. And I'm glad that you weren't confused when I came up to you. You were just more panicked that you maybe had missed an appointment.
Yeah.
I'm glad I could put that to bed in my mind.
Well, no, it's good. It's good. Like I appreciate it.
The First Step, that's the name of the documentary.
Yes. And right now we're still looking for a distributor. So
Okay, I'll do it.
I'm proud of it. And I feel like the one thing I think it's good about the moment that we're in is that I used to have to spend a lot of time convincing people that there was a problem.
Yeah.
I used to have to spend like whether it was climate, whether it was race, whether it was criminal justice, police. I no longer have to convince people there's a problem. In fact, the opposite. I got to convince people there's a solution. Because people are now so convinced that there's a problem that they don't know what to do. And I'm proud to be a part of the Dream Corps, where we've got programs on poverty and prisons and pollution and that kind of stuff, where we're bringing people together across these different lines, where we're getting stuff done. We're putting some wins on the board. And that's what keeps you going. But it's good to be able to talk. And like I said, we got a lot of smart people. We don't have a lot of heart people.
Yeah.
It's going to take smart plus heart. And that's what I think you guys are trying to do. And I'm glad to be a part of it.
And tell me the name of your podcast one last time.
It's called Uncommon Ground.
Uncommon Ground.
And it launches in October on Amazon.
Wonderful. So on Amazon in October, Uncommon Ground. Please check it out. As you just heard, Van has a beautiful perspective on so many things. Thanks so much, man. Really great seeing you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman.
Are we rolling?
Yep.
I was thinking about getting ABR tattooed on me.
Oh my God, that's so fun.
Like just hidden somewhere in another tattoo.
I love that.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Should I get that too?
Oh my God, that would be great. I'm going to get a crow. And I'm going to have the crow, because I saw this really cool picture of a crow. I've been looking at a trillion pictures of crows and paintings of crows. And there's this, I assume it's kind of famous because it came up a lot, a picture of a crow. And in its beak, it has a little red ball. And it looks really cool because, they pick things up and they're really clever. I'm thinking that I might have a cherry in his mouth.
I love that.
Cherry for what?
Great question.
For your asshole, Rob.
I feel like getting one is a big deal. Getting my first one would be a big deal. And I just don't know yet if I want to have tattoos or not have tattoos.
Here's what I've told many people, and I am not pro or anti-tattoo. One thing I do want to clear up, because I get this comment occasionally, and the comment is always like, why don't you fucking stop being a patriarch and let your wife get tattoos? Because I believe at some point, Kristen said in some interview that I don't like girls with tattoos. I've just not dated girls with tattoos. Well, Brie had a little one, but whatever. And I always respond like, I don't let or not let her do any fucking thing. So just for the record, I've not declared anyone should or shouldn't get tattoos. But when people are thinking about getting tattoos and they really want one, and I can tell that, but they're nervous about its permanence. What I tell them is that you'll see it for the first week.
Yeah.
And that's it. You will never think about it again. It's so weird. You would imagine that you're going to always be conscious of this thing on you, and you're just not. You're as conscious of it as you are your thumb currently.
Right.
You just know that that's there, and that's the end of your thoughts.
Yeah.
If any part of your analysis involves your fear of regret, I don't believe you'll regret it.
I just don't know if I want to be a person that has tattoos yet.
Of course.
Ding, 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 art. So I had a field trip today. I went to Anne Mansour's house.
And her house.
Yes.
In France?
Her house is here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Local artist.
Uh-huh.
And I got to see a lot of her art. It was incredible. She
You
has
loved
so
it.
many great pieces. And I was getting kind of flummoxed because I want a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And I got to meet her, and she's so lovely and nice and kind and helpful. And she went to Immaculate Heart. And I said, oh, Dax is thinking about maybe sending his children there.
Yeah, the atheist Dax is going to send his girls to a Catholic school.
I do think they're strict.
But I'd love it if one of my girls got kicked out of Catholic school.
Yeah.
It's great.
But then they just have to go to a school that they could just go to originally then.
Yeah, but it's a story. Got kicked out of Catholic school.
Okay. She was lovely, and I was so happy to meet her in person. And
Let's back up.
Yeah.
Because you seemed confused by me saying that. Or you don't understand what I'm saying. Let's put it this way. You meet two gals, and one of them says, I got kicked out of Catholic school in 10th grade. One gal says, nothing. I went to Catholic school. Which one are you more interested in or not?
I don't have that like you have.
Oh,
I
that's
don't have
great.
a thing where I'm like, oh, they're bad. I'm interested.
Rebels. I like rebels.
I'm not bad, and I think I'm interesting.
Yeah. I like rebels. I think there's a story there. Like, you went there, nothing happened. There's no story there. You got kicked out. Well, I bet there's a story coming.
Yeah, that you need a lot of attention is probably the story. I can pretty much wrap that up. No, I don't know. There's a million reasons why people can get kicked out of schools. And sure, I would be curious to know why.
My mama got kicked out, as she told in here,
And so did
from blowing up a typewriter.
Cecily Strong.
Mm.
She got kicked out.
Yeah.
And I do like her very much. So anyway, it was just full circle. It was lovely. I'm buying another piece.
Wonderful.
And I
How fun.
It was really fun, and it was really special. And the Armchairs gave me that because they
did.
connected us, and it was lovely. Okay. Van
Jones.
This was a fun convo. I've been a fan of Van
Sure. A Van fan.
for a long time.
Isn't it funny when one thing I thought of when I left that interview was, to him, the backlash against him is obviously very loud and he's very aware of it. I had no idea there's a backlash against
Yeah.
him. And it just reminded me to remember when I think the world's out to get me, it probably feels that way to me, and it's probably not a thing.
Yeah. Well, even you were saying the other day about Chappelle, like there's this whole thing now against Chappelle because of the new special. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't know.
Right. Yeah, and I love that he said in the special, I'm not too worried because Twitter's not a real place. And to hear it said so
funny.
so plainly, I was like, that's right. It is not a real place.
Yeah. So true.
Oh, I had people. So I posted a picture of Charlie was changing a tire. And so I was fucking with him and I got behind him and I was holding his hamstrings and stuff. So I posted that picture. It's fun. Of course, 99.99999 people said that was funny. And then I had 3 people like, you're a homophobe. And I was like, first and foremost, I'm not making a gay joke. I'm making a joke. I'm making him being weak. Now, if you've associated that with being gay, that's on you. I'm saying he can't even handle changing a tire. Who would want to be, embarrassed like that? That he
because you were helping him in the picture.
Yes.
You weren't. Maybe people were saying that you were
butt fucking
him.
Yeah, but that's on them. And the caption makes the joke incredibly clear, which is this guy's frustrated. The way to help make him feel independent and blah 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 is to do this. The joke is blatantly clear. You've decided to make it a homophobic joke.
Yeah.
And now you're yelling at me about it.
Yeah.
That's not what's happening.
But don't focus on the 0.0001% who said
We're
it.
on the topic of people being mad on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah. Like what Chappelle said, like, who cares? Like, it's
I know.
not,
Yeah.
Okay, we talked about accidental courtesy, that doc. We couldn't remember his name.
No, I got to commit that to memory but that doc has come up 35 times.
Daryl Davis.
Daryl Davis. And you know what? We should fucking have Daryl Davis
I would
on.
love to.
Wobby Wob.
I'll
Make
call
a little note. Give him a call.
Oh, cookies. Cookies are everywhere now online.
Oh, they are?
Haven't you noticed that?
Oh, you mean asking your cookie preferences, not edible cookies.
They passed regulations for it that require it from sites.
They do, but these tricky motherfuckers, this is what pisses me off so much about it. So they basically say, you've now got to give people the option of not having their info sold.
Right.
Which I agree with. Of course we should have that.
Right.
But then they make the menu so complicated, they literally label it like, one will go, do you not want to be a part of advertising? No. And then the next one goes, do you not want to? So, like, you would think you're going to be hitting, Xing out all the ones you don't want, but they're worded opposite every other one. Like, there's so much trickery.
It's very confusing.
Like, you know what the default should be? You can't sell my shit, and then I'll go to a click-through menu if I want you to sell my shit.
I agree.
I'm pissed.
And you have to like click on it and then check different things, and then you just say sure.
Ugh.
Yeah.
What assholes.
Did you finish the doc?
No.
Okay.
I want to say I'm halfway through.
Oh, you're watching an interesting documentary right now. This isn't a fact.
Yeah, Way Down, I think it's called, on HBO Max.
Yeah.
About a megachurch leader.
Yeah.
This woman who, somehow she has a weight loss program that involves redirecting your love for food to love of the Lord. And it's bonkers, as they all are. And yet, like, I love, too, the truth of some of the people in there. Like, they recognize her as, having been ultimately destructive. But they'll say, like, this is the best 8 years of my life, which I like. And that's what's fucking tricky. Like, this person was a very self-serving person. And, she marries this bozo. I mean, absolute gold-digging bozo. And she elevates him to a preacher, basically. And he doesn't know one fucking thing about Christianity. The whole thing is just fraudulent. And yet, someone can have a wonderful, life-changing experience from the whole thing. So, I got to check myself. It's weird. Or the Rajneeshis. Like, many of those Rajneeshis, they stuck with it in some other form. And that was a great part of their life.
That's true.
We watched 60 Minutes, and you thought this college was a cult, but it just wasn't.
Well, it's my opinion that there are culty elements, and it's your opinion that they aren't. But I don't think you.
Well, would
say
we
it's
agree
not.
that cults have leaders? Cults always have a charismatic leader at the center of it.
Conventionally, yeah. But I think you can have leaders that aren't the sole leader. Like there's a fitness cult, and there's no one at the center besides the person who created it. But that person isn't the leader. But there are leaders within it that have emerged. Some of the instructors are like, people are just like, they take everything as doctrine. So, I think there can be things that are culty that are...
I think what makes something a cult is that there's something nefarious about it, that it is ultimately servicing an individual and that money is being extracted from the parishioners or sexual favors. Like, that's what makes it a cult to me. So if it doesn't have any of those elements.
But you've said Groundlings is a cult.
It is a cult, and it had leaders, and they took your money.
But it wasn't nefarious.
It wasn't nefarious, no. But it also, I don't think the Groundlings is actually a cult. I think Jim Jones is a cult. I think the Rajneeshis were in a cult. I think,
Cult-like, I said.
Yeah, I'll flippantly say things are culty. And I think that's what you're saying about.
No, I'm saying it had, the fitness place had cult-like, it was cult-like.
Yeah, but so they have a cult expert in this documentary, and he is actually defining what makes a cult. One of them is like cutting off communication with family members. Like, there's just all these standard criteria for a cult. And yeah.
I get that.
They want to isolate you. They have to have some strong statement that rejects conventional wisdom.
Well, I think that school is that. It's definitely like, take this path instead. That's much different than the conventional path.
Right.
What we're saying, there was an episode of 60 Minutes, there was about a segment about a college in California, 2-year college. And I guess after this conversation, you're right. It's not a cult, but I do think it's cult-like.
I think you could say it's radical. That I totally would agree with you. It's radical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That it is. It's like, you got to wake up at 5 a.m. and milk cows before you go to school. You got to tend land. You got to do the irrigation. You're supposed to do 20 hours of labor.
Yeah.
The students run the whole thing. They vote on everything and set.
They make the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's definitely radical.
Yeah. But anytime there's like a big group of people with group think, I'm wary of that.
Me too.
But it was a good segment.
I think too, cults generally have an enemy. They define themselves in opposition to either, a governmental force like these sovereign citizen people, or like there's an adversary in their story, consumerism. Or
I would say that is the case at this college, that they're actively against new age youngdom, like phones in people's hands, and the way we operate normally as teenager or young college kids.
That's probably what informs your opinion. Like, so my opinion of what they're telling the kids to do seems probably very beneficial for a finite period of time.
Yeah, I think
like
that's
to
right.
step away from all the technology and to do physical labor and feel what that feels like with your body. So I guess I'm in favor of what they're what they're recommending,
Yeah.
and I don't see it in any way as destructive. There's no way waking up at 5 and milking cows is destructive to anyone. So I think just because I agree with all the radical things that they're proposing, I don't see it as problematic.
I get that.
It was fun though. We had a lot of fun debating whether or not it was a cult while we were watching it. You were calling the cowboy. You were calling him a professor. And some of the teachers had family members there. You know, they lived there with their families, and you were saying that the children were professors.
It's like anytime there's a kid professor at your college, it's not a good place. I don't care. If it makes those people happy, great. I don't care. I wouldn't choose to go there, and I don't have to go there. So that's it.
There you go.
That's it.
Those are all the facts.
Yeah, there really
Okay.
weren't much.
There weren't any facts.
Again, Van comes with his own facts, you know.
Yeah. He's potentially who you'd be referencing when pointing out the truth about something else.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I love you.
I love you.
Bye.